What is up, my ninjas? I'm STRYDENT, and welcome back to another video. I have a lot to talk about. It's been a while. I apologize. I mean, it hasn't been that long, but it's been long enough. I apologize for the absence. You guys already know. I'm not even going to go through explaining it all. You know, life, YouTube, lack of motivation because it doesn't feel like it's paying off as much because you're constantly running into shit from YouTube. But as you can see, a lot has found a space up on my review station on my desk, and I got a lot to talk about. That's not all the source of today's video, but you will see more on these things over the next couple of weeks. I got some mail from a fellow YouTuber, Action Figure Addict 112. Him and I have been going back and forth for a while. We've been friends for a while, actually, and he sent me McCree and some Cops comics, an X-Men comic, and a couple other figures he actually found for me that I will be reviewing soon. So thank you, homie, man. I really appreciate it. I've been spending a lot of time, you know, kind of going back and just practicing what I preach, you know, appreciating old stuff, appreciating stuff I already have. I've been fortifying my my Transformers ranks because as much as I love Transformers, I haven't been, like, I always collect them, but I always collect a bunch all at once, and then I don't collect them for a while because I'm not interested in the long term. Like, I've got much more than that to talk about. But ODC and I did a video talking about it, kind of just chilling and talking. It was kind of good. I'm gonna give you some of the highlights, but I think we might do another one because I was tired and my thoughts kept going all over the place. I got this 80th Cap, and I have 80th Thor on the way. I have a lot to say about them, not because they're bad, but because I think they're overhyped. You know, a little bit more sculpt and a little bit more paint, and you want to charge us more money? Like, it doesn't make sense, you know? And it's not even more than, like, the average. I got these two. Hasbro's customer service fucking blows. I don't know what it is, man. Like, the Mary Jane, the second head had goop in the sculpt on her hair, and they didn't want to do anything for me. I still got to talk about these guys here, both of those Shuris, because the $10 one has a better overall sculpt in many ways than the $20 Marvel Legends version. It has all the articulation, and also they kind of cheaped out when it came to her feet. So yeah, I'm going to talk about that. Professor X, you know, I got him at the toy show. Wonderful figure. I got a lot to talk about with him. But, you know, overall, I've been picking up odds and ends. I've been spending a lot of time, like I said, with Transformers. The Lightning collection, I'm loving the Lightning collection. I've been looking at older figures a lot, you know, like this Michelangelo here. There's some other older figures that I'm going to talk about briefly in this video. I did finish the Black Order finally. I just have to get a armored Thanos, any movie version of Thanos. I wasn't really, you know, but, you know, old figures, Cadillacs and dinosaurs. I've been always wanting to get those figures, and I'm going back into looking at what I like about them and getting, you know, the figures, the characters I like the most. I played the shit out of that video game, and I used to watch that cartoon until it got cut off. And it was one of the better ones because it was animated by a Japanese studio in a time when they were kind of moving away from that. My X-Men ranks, I finally got Storm. She's not in this picture, but I got Storm, and all I have to get now is Archangel, and I'm done. Of course, there's Dazzler. That's one of my first loves. When I was a little kid or younger boy figuring out the whole, you know, these are girls, that was one of the ones that I was just like, holy shit. Iceman, kind of a good figure, but man, I mean, you can already see issues just looking at him, and I don't get why Hasbro will do so much right sometimes, and then they always do a thing to fuck it up. Maybe they have that Thanos complex, the comic book Thanos complex, where as much as they want to succeed, they really want to fail. So they kind of build in an Achilles heel. Storm, the new Storm, it's nice, but, you know, unpopular opinion, as usual with me, it's not a better figure than this, you know? There's not more sculpted detail. It's just not better. The shoulder pads pop off. Anyway, something that will not be toppled is Jetfire. So I still have my original G1 Jetfire. He was one of the few G1 figures that I think stood the test of time because he was a Veritech fighter, and or a Valkyrie, depending on the time period. But this figure is amazing. I'm only showing you him in his alt mode just because I want to talk about everything when I do the review, because man, I've been having so much fucking fun with him, and I kind of knew I would. But back to the old figures, Congo. So over the years, I've been collecting, getting for my son, I've been getting the Space Marine figures, the Aliens toy line, because he can't watch the movie, but he has watched the fight scenes from AVP, the first AVP, so he knows what they do. And my brother and I had all kinds of stories about the things we did with, the Space Marine figures, the action scenes we played and the storylines we came up with. So he wanted to get in on that too. So when we were at Big Fun, we started picking those up. But picking those up made me recognize how much I love the old Kenner aesthetic. I went back and I started looking at my Dark Knight collection figures, and there's just something to be said about a simple, sturdy figure with a very nice sculpt. Granted, none of these characters look like who they're supposed to be in the movie, but I don't care because I got them and we came up with our own little story and they're our own characters, you know what I mean? But that was the beauty of it. I think back when I was a kid, someone I knew had these figures and we didn't know what Congo was. We hadn't seen trailers because I think the figures dropped before the movie, or they dropped and we had never seen the trailer or the commercial for the movie. So we just played with them as adventurers, like in the vein of Indiana Jones. That was my chair, by the way. You're going to hear that a lot because I move around while I'm talking. But, we came up with our own story, and we've been playing around with them, and it's been fun, man. Just to let your imagination run wild with figures that you can just plop them in a spot and they stand up. You don't have to think too hard about it either. You just, bloop, you put them down, they stand up. You want to make them punch? Put the arm up, you make them punch. You don't have to worry about all the joints and all that stuff. So the idea will be that, after we've played through, you go save those people, save them. After we go through, our little story and whatnot, I'll eventually give these to my son just so that he can experience and come up with his own shit, because he's starting to, and he's recognizing that simple doesn't necessarily mean bad. Because one thing I hear on the non-retro channels is that old figures suck, and it's like, you probably didn't have these figures, so you don't know what the charm is. Like, this is not exactly what Hannah Dundee looked like in Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, because she didn't wear her hair always in a ponytail, but it is what she looked like. You know what I'm saying? Black hair, the tied up shirt, the jeans, and the high riding boots. They got the likeness right when it's a cartoon character. As far as like the characters from Congo, that black dude you saw in the front was supposed to be Ernie Hudson, who had a mustache and a kind of a perm. And the toy looks nothing like that. He wasn't even that ripped in the movie because that's not what they were emphasizing. He was just great at his job. He's like if Nathan Drake was a guide, that's literally what Ernie Hudson's character Monroe was in Congo. But, I can appreciate it now, having played things that kind of lean into that aesthetic and having watched other films that, kind of play on that aesthetic. So this is my original Magna Defender from when I was a kid back in the 90s. I want to say late 90s. He became one of my favorite figures really fast. And it's not just because he's a knight, although that helps. It's a lot of things. But seeing him realized or reimagined blows my mind. Like, I'm still like, how the fuck, how did we get here? You know what I mean? Because I never thought they would actually give a shit enough. Because if you look at the Power Rangers media, he's one of the quote unquote sixth Rangers that just doesn't get any love. Even though he's got a compelling story, he was different from like the run-of-the-mill characters, and he actually he had an arc. He had like a full good arc. Like, anyone should be able to understand his frustrations. But just as a toy, he's inspired a lot. I mean, like, if you know my comic and everything, which I'm gonna put pictures in here so you can see, Magna Defender straight up inspired STRYDENT. Matter of fact, what became Strident was actually a redesign of the Magna Defender. I was doing work for a class. It might have been an animation class, if I remember correctly, and we had to create, our own versions of existing characters. I wanted him to be, the dope, Dark Knight-ish, Black Knight swordsman type character. And then the more I designed him, I was like, I liked elements from Odin's design from Final Fantasy VIII. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll mix the two. And then I ended up with this weird design that kind of felt like the Strident that you've been seeing. Over the years, I've simplified things to get to the point that he's at in the comic right now. But overall, it all came from Magna Defender. I saw this character years ago, and I was just like, man, this dude's dope. If I could be a ranger, this would be the character I would be. I was getting into swords and stuff, as far as, actual training goes, because before I was all about the staff. My little brother was all about swords and stuff, and I don't know. It just was weird, the right things kind of happened at the right time, but his story was compelling, and Gingaman was compelling too. I mean, it had its out there moments, but it's one of my favorite tokusatsu shows, and it captures the whole fantasy vibe. It was almost like Zyuranger Part 2, in some ways. But seeing this character who seemed like nobody was paying attention to, seeing him reimagined, and then of course seeing all the collectors, kind of dick ride this character now, who's been around forever, but they're dick riding. All of a sudden now everybody wants to know his backstory. Everybody wants to talk about, I'm a fan of the Magna Defender. Motherfucker, you didn't even watch the show until you saw this figure. So, I'm surprised that Hasbro even got to them before Figuarts. I thought Bandai would have long since made a figure of him, one that comes with all the stuff. His other form comes with the big old golden axe, the whole nine. The two knife things that are connected to the two like shorter swords that are connected to the chain that he uses when he's controlling the Torozord. I expected to have seen that shit years ago, and we still haven't seen it. I have the Bandai version, the DX version that came with the Torozord. I forgot what it was called in the Japanese version, but yeah, the Torozord version. I still have all that shit, but that's it, So seeing him redone in a more articulated fashion, with articulation that rivals Figuarts. Yes, I've said it because I'm gonna continue to say this if they continue on this thread. The Lightning Collection has bridged the gap between domestic figures and import figures. The Black Series is on the way. It's just Black Series articulation doesn't match Figuarts. But the Lightning Collection, holy shit. And this figure's no different, even with armor. He just, man. And I mean, you can already see inspiration on just this lightweight custom that I made for Strident for the sake of these videos. The details are there, and he's worth, man. I don't want to give away, how I feel, but I mean, you could already tell I love this figure. Not just because I love the character either. It's not perfect, and I have nitpicks and issues, but let's just jump into it so we can talk about it. So if you have been on my channel for any length of time, you have heard at least one time what I just told you guys about me creating a character based on the Magna Defender. I tried not to do it all the time because I don't want you guys to get the wrong idea and think that I just straight jacked the character, because it's not what I did. The inspiration was there. But I love this character, and seeing him in the Lightning Collection just blows my mind because I didn't think that would happen. But I still have my original. The original is a lightweight custom cape. You can see that the original hit a lot of the marks, you know what I mean? They did a good job getting a lot of the details. I mean, of course I gave him a different cape, so it's not the black outside, red inside like the TV version, but and like this version, but he has a cloth cape, so it gets out of the way when I want to make him pose, because remember, these guys are limited in articulation. It's like, I don't know, 8 what is it, 10 points of articulation, something like that, because he has bendable knees and bendable elbows, and then maybe 12 points of articulation, because then he has the twists at the wrist. But you could pull off some decent poses, but there was a need for him to be updated, because I mean, like I said, this is it, and this was back in the late 90s. I want to say 98, 99, something like that. So seeing them update him, not only is he bigger, the colors are more vibrant, the little bit of color that's there, some of the detail, because they miss detail, because it's Hasbro. I mean, we gotta face it, they never do a completely they rarely do a perfect job. But seeing the details kind of popped to the forefront, it's nuts. It's nuts. It looks so good. It's just like, wow, they really did it. They really fucking did it. You gotta give them props. Seeing all three of these characters together, you know, seeing the Magna Defender and seeing myself, and then seeing you know, a new Magna Defender, you know, it's just it's amazing, because I never thought this would happen. I mean, I'm being honest, I never thought this would happen, because like I said, he's not a character that gets a lot of love, and the fact that they finally did it makes me extremely happy, because that means that, you know, there might be other you know, more obscure characters that showed up in other series that they'll be able to get a Lightning series figure. I mean, like the Phantom Ranger from way back when in Power Rangers Turbo. Cool design. I think he was an American-only character, and, you know, he's only had one figure. I used to have that figure back in the day. It was weird with the turbine in his chest and shit. But, yeah, to see this, just, it means there's hope for other characters, but it warms my heart, because finally it's a character that I dig getting kind of the royal treatment, you know? There are a lot of little things for me to point out, but overall it's a very simplistic figure that's done in a very decent, you know, with a decent approach. He doesn't feel like he needs anything more. They just need to tweak some of the things that are there, and you can clearly see some of the things that are wrong when you see those two side by side. Strangely enough, the one from my childhood is more accurate than this giant one, which is weird, because you'd think that, you know, it wouldn't be like that. But even with a black cape, a fully black cape, the figure itself is still more on model with what we saw in the show than this new Magna Defender figure, which is sad, because you'd think the bigger figure, it should be easier for you to highlight all those details, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, this is Hasbro. There are things that, for whatever reason, I painted that sword too, so, you know, it's worn because I actually made him use the sword after I painted it. But there are things, details, aspects of this figure that, even though he lacks the posability, they're more true to what the character was like on screen, and I'm gonna highlight those in this review hardcore, because, you know, I'm a dork like that, and plus this is a character that is one of my favorites, so it deserves all the attention that I can give it, and, you know, all the information that I can drop on you guys about him, because, I mean, shit, I'm having the opportunity to do so. I mean, which is like something that doesn't always fucking happen, you know? The key things that you got to pay attention to, though, during this review is just accuracy, because that's the only thing that's different from the original figure to the new figure. Some details remained, and others were kind of lost in the translation. But overall, what you get is something else, and I'm going to show you. So just looking at his general sculpt, you can see that from any angle, it looks pretty close to what we've seen, at least at some point in the TV show, which is nice, you know? The gold is nice and vibrant, the silvers are nice and clean, the green is bright. It works. It's not a shitty paint job. It's not a shitty sculpt by any means. The cape even is good. And, you know, I hate plastic capes. The cape actually looks like something. And that's the part that always bugs me with plastic capes. Sometimes they look good, they can't move. This cape is made out of a pliable kind of rubbery plastic type material, and it moves really well. Was it like a vinyl material? But Magna Defender himself, he looks like he can't really move, but you can get that sculpt it works in different positions. Now, it's not perfect. The armor on his thighs kind of restricts some of the range of motion of the thighs, so he can't do a perfect split. But you'll see from some of these pictures of them in motion, he can get down. You can kind of pose him to do a lot of different things, and I'm glad that they put him like that. But one thing I like, and I talked about this with like Reveltech videos, is that when you have a very dynamic character who you can pose in all kinds of different ways, it's really cool when you can finally stand them up straight and admire all the details that way, because typically that's not the case. So I don't know, playing around with him was fun. He holds poses really well, as you can see. The armor bits move out the way on his shoulders, unlike the Mythic Legion's figure or figures. Those shoulder bits move out of the way if you move them, but sometimes when you're moving the Mythic Legion's figure, it doesn't quite do what it's supposed to do, you know? So it's kind of nice to finally sit down and play with this guy after seeing so many videos and enjoy what's going on, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't feel like the figure is restricted, you know what I mean? I know I'm talking about articulation, but this is kind of, and the sculpt and all that together, but you know, this is kind of serving as that. But let's look up close, you know, look at that face. They did a great job with the visor. The paint, while it's not like thick, it seems like it's just enough. You can kind of see where it's fading, but it works. It's just enough. The gold is very bright, but it doesn't really look like gold. The green is nice and kind of metallic, but it doesn't have the prismatic effect. The silver lining on his armor is missing, and the belt. Why is the belt gray? Do they think we'd lose it? I don't get that. But like I said, the lining is nice. I'm surprised they were able to do this, because that's not something that Hasbro does well. But if you look at the old one, the lining is silver all over. They didn't leave it anywhere. And the belt is black, much like it's supposed to be on the show. So I don't know what was going through their heads when it came to leaving those little lines out on the, you know, the actual figure. Okay, let's get into the accessories. He doesn't come with a ton of accessories, which is one of the things that I don't like about the, if anything, it's the main thing I don't like about the Lightning collection. But he does come with the necessary accessories. Comes with a plasma blast effect for the Magna Blaster, which is dope, especially now that he can actually shoulder the damn rifle the way he's supposed to. I think that's amazing. Just the idea behind this weapon is amazing. Don't be surprised if you see me rip this off in one of my comics with some character of mine, because I think it's a very creative concept. You know, it's like taking the gun blade and kind of flipping it a little bit, or being a little bit more practical about the concept of a gun blade. The sword is the final piece to the blade. He comes with hands to help him use that. There's a hand to support the front end of the gun, and then there's another hand to hold it. There are pegs on both sword sheaths to have them clipped, although I don't understand why you would have the you know, the gun mode. The sword mode makes sense, gun mode does not, so you know, you would never see that. I don't know what they were thinking there. So now we are at the problems, issues, and nitpicks. Scale of some of these weapons. So, you know, I know back in the day, one of the things about like 90s figures is that things were scaled up so that you wouldn't lose them. You know, G.I. Joe was scaled small, but like everything else was scaled larger. Why is it that with this, when you have a much larger figure, the sword seems like the toy version of the weapon? You know what I mean? Like, it's not 100% off, but when you look at, you know, the one on the right that I painted, looks more like what you saw on screen than what we got with the actual Magna Defender figure. Now, the gun is not so bad. It's just the sword mode. But that's my nitpick. I'll stop there. So I wanted to go over some of the articulation because at first glance, I could see how people would think that he's not that posable. But as you'll see in many of these pictures, you know, the shoulders move, the armor gets out of the way for the most part. I mean, you kind of have to fiddle with things, but it moves out of the way enough. You know, he's got a bicep swivel, double jointed elbows that really give him a lot of range, which is beautiful. It's standard for all of the Lightning collection, which makes me very happy. The universals at the shoulders are nice. The hinges on the shoulder pads are nice too. He's got that ball joint or ball socket joint at the top of the diaphragm, which when you use it by itself, it gives you a nice crunch, but when you use it with the crunch, and then like say you're doing a kick, it gives you extra range going up, it gives you extra range going back. It's a really well done piece of articulation, and it amazes me. Double jointed knees, there is a thigh swivel. His legs can only go out that far because the armor starts to butt against the there's the thigh swivel. The armor starts to butt against his pelvis. There's a twist up at the top of the diaphragm. There's a crunch there too. He's got the twist at the ankle as well as the ankle pivot and the up and down motion, which is nice. I mean, you'd think that a figure like this wouldn't have very much articulation, but like I said, it's deceptive, but it's there. And the way all this, the range on all of this, I mean, look at that sickle foot, man. That looks like that shit would cut right through somebody. And despite the armor, he still gets a decent range on with his legs, with his split. It's just not as far as I would have imagined, you know, someone like this. So all in all, he's got the goods, man. Real quick, I want to just do some comparisons. Lightning collection, some random other figures from Overwatch, Marvel Legends, and Mezco. Then you've got some Figuarts, Mythic Legions, and Figma. And, you know, I had to throw STRYDENT in there, of course. Then you've got other Bandai products. NECA is thrown into the mix. Nika. More Hasbro, Figuarts, and Soda. And then, you know, Mattel and Marvel Select. All right, my favorite part is the bottom line, because I mean, ultimately, this is the part that everybody's kind of waiting for. You want to know, is it good? Is it worth picking up? Yes, it's good. It's worth picking up, just not for the aftermarket prices. Now, people say stuff like, you know, it's what you're willing to pay. Fuck that shit. Kill that noise 100%, because that's where things are running off the rails these days. This figure is a $20 figure. Is it a really well done $20 figure? Yes. Should you be paying $60 for it? No. Should you be paying $50 for it? No. Because you're not getting $50 worth of figure. He only comes with one set of hands other than the ones he's wearing. He only comes with, you know, one extra version of his gun. You know what I mean? Not that he needs a whole bunch. His articulation, while it's a lot, it's not 100%. You know, it's not the best example of the Lightning collection, but it is a good example. So, you know, it will look dope on your shelf, don't get me wrong, but not for 50, 60, 70, 80, not for these aftermarket prices. These motherfuckers have lost their damn minds. He's not a Mezco. You know what I mean? He's not like your full-on prestige version of like a Figuarts or a Mafex that comes with like all the accessories and the hands and like, you know, the little dagger that he got from his son / his brother, depending on which version you learned. He doesn't have like the Mike Corbett head from the second half of the show. He doesn't have the Hyuga head from, you know, the Japanese one. Could you imagine if he came with both heads so you could decide, is your version Bull Black from Ginga Man, or is he the Magna Defender from the first half of Lost Galaxy, or is he from the second half where it's Mike Corbett? These are all things that, you know, like a deluxe figure should come with. Some of that would warrant the higher price, and that's not what you're getting here. But if you can find him for regular price, and he is hitting stores these, like right now, he's worth the money. Trust me. The whole Lightning collection is worth the money. When you pay the $20, it's worth it. 25 at the most. They're worth it. But don't go paying those stupid aftermarket prices, man. These motherfuckers, they're killing our hobby with greed, and we need to actually do more to prevent that from becoming the way it goes, or you're gonna see this shit dry up real fast. So take the time, do the hunting, look for him on maybe Amazon or something, or look for him at the reasonable price. You know, maybe 30 shipped, maybe, and that's pushing it in my opinion. But overall, this is a beautiful figure. Very well done effort from Hasbro. I'm surprised they even went down this road, because here's a character that once again is kind of obscure for a lot of people, and I'm surprised to see them put the love in and give us a good rendition of this guy. So yeah, I'm loving it. I'm glad they did this, and I think if you are a fan of tokusatsu, and if you just like good figures, you know, you'll dig this figure, and he'll be perfectly in perfect shape to be up on your shelf. And you know, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So buy this guy. He is definitely an A+ effort from Hasbro. A+ because the range of motion isn't amazing, you know, fully, and because the accessory count is kind of, you know, he doesn't really come with very much, and he's a character that doesn't need that much. He should have came with a bunch of hands, you know, but that's something that the Lightning collection still has to learn, and I hope that they they start doing that in the future. So anyway, this has been my look at the Hasbro Lightning Collection Magna Defender. It's a great figure. You should pick it up, and that's all there is to it. So yeah, that's it for me. You guys have been great. Hopefully it won't be as long before the next video. And with that, peace outside.